and welcome. You are listening to the new WCEG Network on WCEGTalkRadio.com live stream. You can also watch us on Smart TV, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, WCEG Network. We also have a podcast now, and we're on Alexa. I am attorney Mel LaGrone, and I am your show host of Beyond the Border for the next hour. We are the worldwide community empowerment group. We speak life into the community. Subscribe free to our YouTube channel at WCEG Network. You can like, follow, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Y'all, we are all over the place, okay? Find us. We also have new platforms, so download our free mobile app on Apple Store and Android. Remember, everyone, that the topics and opinions are those of the show host and the guest and not of WCEG Network. And thank you all for your continued support. So we are back for our new season. So excited. And this morning I have got a little noise in the background, so you have to excuse me. But I have Elizabeth G. She is a corporate business immigration attorney out of Atlanta, Georgia. And if you guys have watched my show in the past, you know we talk a lot about family immigration, removal defense, and things like that. But today I thought it was really important to start talking a little bit more about corporate and business immigration because there's a lot of confusion going on in the world about it. And we definitely want to, get rid of some of the myths and things like that. So Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for being on the show. We're so excited.
Thank you for having me, Melaney. I'm so blessed and honored to be here as your guest and to meet with your audience today.
Yay, you are very, very welcome, of course. All right, so let's start out first with, I'm just going to ask the question of what is corporate business immigration? What do you do?
Great question. I've kind of come to kind of narrow it down and not get into the nitty gritty of what I do because I'm so excited about being able to help businesses and individuals and investors come to the United States, leveraging their businesses, their employment skills, employability to help businesses that are in the United States. So I generally help companies bring workers to the United States to work and live in the U.S., but it's restricted to certain types of jobs and industries, unfortunately. I also help businesses or entrepreneurs from all over the world come and start businesses in the U.S. so that they could have full control over their lives, right? I also help individuals who want to look into possibly sponsoring themselves because their credentials are so awesome, and also create a pathway to citizenship or permanent residency first and then citizenship by self-petitioning themselves. So corporate and business immigration all encompasses areas of immigration law that doesn't include sponsorship by a family member or interacting with immigration court or any of the humanitarian side of the visa options available.
Awesome. Okay, so let's start out with, all right, helping employers, okay? Because we know that in the U.S., it is really, really hard to find workers. And so you help businesses find employees, right, out of the country and bring them here and sponsor them for jobs, right?
So not exactly. I don't help recruit the individuals.
Okay.
Businesses already, when they come to me, have already identified a particular individual that they want to hire. So some of my clients are, it's very industry specific. So I'm just going to give you an example of something that's a little bit more common. So we hear a lot about IT, right? We have a lot of foreign students who study in the United States and get degrees in computer science or something related, sometimes doing advanced degrees, meaning they get a master's degree in that field. So what happens is after you're a student and you graduate, you get a certain period of time to work in that field, which is called an OPT period. So the theory is, well, you spent all this money to learn, and get this advanced degree from a U.S. institution. We're going to give you time to try your field or try working in that industry, and also possibly lead to more permanent employment through that employer that you find. So it's not an internship per se, but it's actual employment that these individuals, because, by the time they get their master's degrees, depending on the major, some of these individuals are ready to go. They're like, I need to start earning money. So they're ready to go, and they're very excited to start working in the field that they studied in, not just in the classroom, but in real life. And what employers tend to do is establish some sort of a pipeline of individuals that they're like, oh, I like this guy, I like this person because they're great. And then now they're looking for something a little bit more long-term than the initial 12 months that they may be granted. And that's where I come in.
Okay, so so let's say you come to the US on a student visa, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you study here in the United States, and then you have an opportunity to be picked up by an employer to actually have an opportunity to stay here and work here.
Absolutely. Actually, after you graduate and you're granted OPT, you're only allowed 90 days of unemployment, which means if your intention is not to get a job and start working in a field that is directly related to your major, you got to leave, or you got to change your status to something else. So it's a matter of compliance that these individuals find a job or an internship or some sort of, unpaid opportunity that allows them to work in the major or work in an industry that is connected to their major. Now, from an employer's perspective, you're looking at this as a pipeline for future people to fill the seats that are in your organization, having this specific expertise or this, area of education that you're looking for. So as I mentioned, like in the IT industry, it creates a very natural pipeline. And what happens next are work visas. So we commonly hear about the H-1B. We hear about it because, it's oversubscribed.
Okay, so hold on, because I know you're passionate, and I know you can go on and on and on and on. And you know that immigration is very, very complicated, and it's like an alphabet.
Yes, it's an alphabet soup. Yeah.
All right.
Right.
So, let's back up a little bit. Okay, so student comes here, gets a job in their major, and they work. Okay.
Yep.
Now, what if I have a corporate employer, who is looking in the United States but cannot find someone who is qualified to fill whatever job they're looking for? Okay, maybe it's very specialized. And they find someone out of the country. So are you able to help with, once they find that person out of the country, able to help them bring that person here to work for them?
Generally, yes.
Okay.
So but it depends on the role, and it really depends on the qualifications that are required for the role, not set necessarily by the employer, but what's set by the Department of Labor and USCIS regulations.
That's the alphabet soup.
Exactly. Unfortunately, I'd like to be able to say, hey, employer, you're having a hard time finding the right person to fill that role in your organization. Can you seek out, outside our borders and see if you find somebody? And generally, the employers don't have difficulty finding this person, but depending on the industry or the type of work that they're offering, they may or may not be eligible for a work visa that allows that individual to enter and work in the United States. So it's more of a comprehensive planning that the employer has to do. And generally, it starts with a phone call. Call me, and they're like, all right, this is what we do. This is who we need. We found this person in XYZ country. Tell us what the next steps are or what is possible.
Can you see if they're qualified and they're actually able to meet one of those requirements of the alphabet soup?
Absolutely.
Type of visas. Okay.
But what I kind of see more often, unfortunately, by the time someone calls me, they're already here. They're already here.
Yeah, and that's that misconception myth thing that's going on. Yeah.
Yes. Like, most commonly,
they come here. Yeah.
Yes. They're here on a tourist visa. So their intention is tourism. And then somehow they land on a job opportunity, which is great. You're not looking, but you You don't know who you're going to meet while you're standing in line at Disneyland. I don't know.
Mhm.
And you meet someone and you have a, meaningful conversation and it leads to a job offer. Fine. We can definitely have a conversation about how to transition or how you're going to go back to your home, you know, settle affairs or get your, family and your, moving stuff together. And we can, make the transition a more organized, right? A more organized manner. But if you're already here and you have a month left in your tourist visa and you're like, hey, how can I work? Then that's a whole different conversation that may or may not come out, in your with results that you like.
And that's what a lot of people think, is they think that they can come on a B1, B2, like a visitor's visa. And they're like, oh, well, I want to stay, so let me seek out someone who will sponsor me.
Right.
And they think that they can just stay, but that's not how it works.
No, unfortunately, that's not how it works. And a lot of the visas, or even the work visas, depending on, it really matters what the, type of job you're being offered is. It matters where, your country of birth, or where where you have citizenship, where your passport is from. And it also matters on what type of industry your employer or your sponsor has. So all of that kind of have to line up in order for this to work. Especially in the non-traditional sense where you're not like a big corporation and you do this day in and day out. I especially love helping companies that are smaller, that think they may not be eligible to bring somebody from abroad to work, a specific job, but, they're very pleasantly surprised when I tell them, yeah, you can. You don't have to be an Apple or Google or Facebook. Can I say that? Yeah.
It's a lot more complicated. It's a lot more detailed and intricate than a lot of people think it is.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
what about this myth of foreigners are taking U.S. jobs? You hear that all the time. Oh, right. Immigrants are coming and they're taking our jobs. Right. Come on. At the end of the day, if you wanted to work,
exactly,
employers wouldn't be seeking immigrants to come in and work.
Exactly. And a lot of these jobs, so one of the things I kind of want to get straighten up while we're here, with access to a lot of your viewers, is the difference between status and visa. It kind of is a pet peeve of mine when, especially, attorneys themselves and people maybe, who are not attorneys trying to help people with their immigration. That's a separate topic. That's a whole other topic, another day. We might need 5 hours for that. But in any case, use those terms interchangeably, and it harms the client. It harms the immigrant because of this. Status is something you get when you land on U.S. soil. So a visa is a document that you get from the consulate abroad, which gives you permission to seek entry. So we have the alphabet soup of visas, right? A, B, C, D, E, you name it. So we just pick B, the B, like you said, the B1, B2, which is B1 for business and B2 for pleasure or tourism. And that's the tourist visa we commonly call. So you have a 10-year visa in your passport. It just gives you permission to seek entry at a border crossing in the United States. So if you're granted yes, and they're like, welcome to the United States, and they stamp you for 6 months, that's when you have B1 or B2 status.
Right.
So depending on what...
That's just a status. That is just a temporary status to be in the U.S.
Exactly. And depending on the type of visa you present, your rights, right, your obligations are different, right? Mm-hmm. The time that you're allowed to be here is different. Every visa comes with, special stipulations that you have to abide by. So when we have people here working on specific, visa types, they cannot think that just because they have the visa doesn't mean that they have status. They have to activate that by crossing the border and entering the United States. So another thing that happens is you come, say, on the B1, B2 visa, and you're granted B1, B2 status, and then you change your status in the United States to a different one that allows you to work. Mm-hmm. Now, when you go home and visit someone, or you leave the United States for a vacation, don't be surprised if you can't come back without the accompanying visa in your passport. So in other words, you can't come back on the B1, B2 and then change your status back again. First of all, that'd be really expensive if you do that every time. I don't think your employer will like that. Second of all, depending on what kind of work you do, and the type of, visa that you're sponsored for or status that you apply for, the Department of Labor, especially when it comes to employment-based matters, the Department of Labor is tasked with protecting U.S. jobs and U.S. wages. So this, miscommunication or this, fallacy that's out there that says foreigners are, depressing U.S. wages by working for cheaper than an American, or foreigners are stealing our jobs, it's not true. Otherwise, you're saying the Department of Labor is not doing their job. And I assure you, they are. They are doing their job.
Because the Department of Labor is involved in
many of the processes.
with these visas, with the process, right?
Right.
So, okay, so you talked about the myths of the visas and people using them, the language inaccurately.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between a work visa and a work permit? Because people think they're the same thing.
Yes, and we have to be careful that we don't use those terms interchangeably. So a work permit is a card. It's actually a physical identification card that gives you employment authorization in the United States. And it's usually issued as an ancillary benefit, so as a bonus to applying for some sort of petition or benefit that overarches the reason for you having that employment authorization. So the theory is, for example, if we're filing a family-based petition where, a husband is sponsoring a wife or vice versa, or a husband and husband, doesn't matter. And then we know that the processing times can vary depending on where you live, and the processing times are not short. It's not anything immediate. So the government's rationale is, well, while we process your case, the case that is going to give you the permanent residency, let us give you employment authorization so that at least you can get started on your life. So it's giving you permission to work lawfully in the United States. We have individuals in DACA, right, with DACA, which is not considered status, but granted employment authorization, which means that they are allowed to legally work in the United States. Now, a work visa is a completely different animal. A work visa is something, like I said, a visa is granted from the consulate or embassy outside the U.S., and it's specified depending on the qualifications or the requirements for that visa. So again, we can go through the alphabet soup, but I assure you they all have different requirements. Mm-hmm. And with that visa, it's usually tied to a specific employer. So the employer that is sponsoring you. So let me just pull one out, my favorite, which is the H-1B, and it's very employer specific. And you can, you have that, visa, which allows you to work in that job for that employer only, right? There's ways that we can get you multiple filings or multiple H-1Bs for separate employers, but generally, if you have a full-time job, you're working for one person.
So, Elizabeth, it's just because I know H-1B is one of the ones that a lot of people know about, and they yes. hear about that all the time.
Yes.
So, but every visa is specific. So, H-1B would be considered for what type of work? What type of person?
Yes. So, an H-1B is for a specialty occupation. So the regulations define, I'm not gonna bore you with, the recitation of the regs, but basically says if the job, not the job that's being offered to you, but if the job, according to the Department of Labor's description, requires a minimum of a bachelor's degree, it can be defined as a specialty occupation. So as you've already determined, this doesn't encompass any and every job that an employer can possibly offer you. And I understand the frustration with especially my clients who are in the skilled labor industry. And what I mean by skilled labor could be hospitality, construction, plumbing, or any of the crafts. They mostly can't utilize the H-1B visa because these jobs do not require a minimum of a bachelor's degree.
Gotcha.
I saw the light bulb go off in your eyes.
Yeah. Ding, ding, ding. Yes. I get it now. I understand.
Yes. And it's so unfortunate because sometimes employers will bring me someone and say, hey, I found somebody who has a bachelor's. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, great. I'm like, what job do you want them to do for you? And they're like X, Y, and Z, which again, I know that the job does not require a bachelor's. And there's that misfit, right? Because even though you have a candidate who has the requirements for an H-1B, if your job doesn't match, we can't file for the H-1B.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've explained, okay, the difference between a work visa, the difference between a work permit. Okay.
Right.
Work permit is a work authorization. That's
Yes.
because you have filed for a certain
Something.
immigration benefit. And, until you get your green card, you
Mm-hmm.
will get your work authorization. Work
Right.
visa, a totally different thing.
Yes.
So now with the work visas, okay, there's also different ones where, and I guess I'm going to back up because everyone, we actually, Elizabeth and I, so everyone I think knows pretty much, and I work in Atlanta, and then I also have an office down in St. Thomas, the U.S. Virgin Islands. And there has been a lot of people coming to me and asking me questions about work visas because they're trying to get employees from other countries to come and help, whether it's rebuild, the islands or construction or things like that. So Elizabeth and I we met through somebody else at like a networking. We're both part of a networking group. And we started talking about this because we were trying to figure out, okay, the need is there. How do we bring in these employees to help these employers? Because at the end of the day, you guys, if you think about it, it's like, if you've got a business who needs somebody to fill the job and they can't find anybody here in the US, what do they do? Like, how do we get, things built? How do we get, even let's go into major stuff like, maybe like doctor type of things, like specialties, what I'm saying? How do we get, this heart surgeon to be able to, do these heart transplants and stuff like that? And there's such a huge need for it. So that's how we ended up, hooking up and trying to figure out how we can help fulfill this need. Because like you said, Elizabeth, it's a little difficult, right? Like there's like these stringent regulations and like you have to ... like everything. And it's not just as easy as, hey, I want to bring this person here and fill them up. So I know that we have talked about, like, you have, you've been working really well with different companies and things like that, corporations to try to do this, basically. So what is your, I guess, what's your method? What's your claim to fame? Like, how are you, are you helping? Because I know you're helping.
Right. So there's a couple of things. So originally I used to think that my, ideal clients and where my specialty is with like the higher, like educational requirement jobs, right? Like the specialty occupation jobs. And those are still, my bread and butter clients because there's always a need and there's always movement, right? It's not a static, it's very dynamic, and it's always movement of people coming in and out, right? And I still help. A large portion of my practice is helping clients in those professions and in those industries. But lately I've been getting a lot of calls and inquiries from clients that are not in the specialty occupation world, but in the more skilled labor world, which is what we kind of talked about on that call. And I started thinking, well, maybe there has to be a way to help these individuals. Right? We clearly, because of the way our education, for example, the educational norm is happening in the United States, there's an oversubscription of people who go to college, right? Sometimes, look, college isn't for everyone. We have to, like me as a parent who's trying not to be a tiger mom, has to accept that college is not for everyone, and that is okay. But what's happening is because, there's this huge push to go to college, or you're not going to be successful. There's a huge void in the area of skilled labor, meaning no one wants to learn how to be a plumber. No one wants to learn how to be an electrician. No one wants to learn, how to do those jobs that, you do with your hands and go to trade school, right? I've had employers say, I'm offering to pay for someone to go to trade school to learn and basically pay them on the job. And people don't want to come because they think the job is too physically demanding, right? Obviously, if you have medical issues and, issues that prevent you from doing, those roles safely, it's another matter. But people just want to work in jobs that are traditionally sitting behind a desk, you know, you know, punching in at 9 and punching out at 5, and it's causing a problem with that side of the, you know, with everything getting so expensive, with like building. And so, you know, so anecdotally, you know, so this client, I was like, look, most of these visas will not, you know, be successful for any type of work visa. We can't help any of the people who are already here working for you, whether you know that whether they're, you know, eligible to work for you or not, that's a separate matter. That's a compliance matter, right? And we have employers who are literally staying up at night worried because they know that they are employing undocumented individuals who they view as family, but at the same time know that because they don't have immigration status, they're a liability for the business, and that if something were to happen, it would, you know, like be a very bad downward spiral, right? So in brainstorming ideas that we can help them, what I came up with is something that's not perfect, and it's not something that is immediate. And I always lead with that. And it's by basically opening a pipeline from outside the United States and sponsoring individuals for permanent residency right off the gate. Now, the risk to the employer is heavy on the front end because there's a financial cost, right? And then there's secondly an investment of time. So the employer is asked to invest their time and money into establishing a pipeline, whether it be a large batch or a small batch, but this is how it works. So say that you're like a plumbing business or you're a restaurant, and you know that you're going to need a certain number of people to work, and you can find them anywhere, you know, outside the United States, whether you have contacts in Jamaica, in Mexico, wherever it may be. You don't have a recruiting problem. You have a getting the person here working for you problem, right? And first thing we would do is screen the individual that you've identified and make sure that they have the qualifications for the job that you're offering them. And number two, that they don't have complex immigration baggage. And what I mean by baggage is history which prevents them from being able to complete the process at the U.S. Embassy, right? So like a prior overstay, for example, or somebody who's
Right. Any sort of immigration
violations. Exactly. Right. So just because they're physically outside the U.S. doesn't mean that they have extras that we need to consider into the equation. But generally, it's, you know, the employment-based green card sponsorship program is a 3-step process. And the first step is done with the Department of Labor. And that step ensures that the U.S. employer has done what they could to find somebody in the U.S. and try to offer a U.S. person who meets the minimum qualifications the job, and then either no one showed up or no one was qualified to meet this job, right? If no one wants it
outside
before they could even before they could even offer this job to the foreign national. And that recruitment process and, you know, all of that is very, you know, closely monitored, and you have the Department of Labor to answer to. You know, like no one would want to take shortcuts in that, because ultimately, you know, that process, if it's not done correctly, could tank everything else. Right? So after you go through that process, and unfortunately right now, not taking into consideration law firm processing time, meaning time that it takes us to get the work done, it'll probably take about, I would say, 15 to 18 months of government processing time. Okay. So once you go through,
anything that's immediate. So it's a waiting game type of thing.
Yes. So I kind of like to describe it as a game of red light, green light. Have you guys played that before? You know, where, you know, red light means you stop, and then when they turn around and say green light, you run like hell. Yeah. And then, you know, they say, you know, red light and you got to stop. So basically, you know, you do one thing and the government says, okay, red light. And then the government responds. That means it's a green light. So you go, and then, you know, you stop again. So with all the stop and go, I would say, conservatively speaking, about, you know, 18 months to a 2-year process. So after that, then finally you've, you know, once you've identified the individual that you want to bring, you can file the immigrant petition. So when we're filing the immigrant petition, it's not a go, 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 go. The employer has to demonstrate to the U.S. government that you have sufficient income to pay this person. Now, you don't want to bring somebody to the U.S. and make them a public charge, because that would, you know, defeat the whole process. You need to demonstrate.
So not only, let me just back up. So not only does the employee have to qualify, okay, but the employer also has to qualify. Because they
Absolutely.
have to show, okay, that
Right.
they have enough
Right.
money to pay this person. Okay.
Exactly. So all the intention in the world is great. You could have the best intentions, but if you don't have the economics behind it, then you, as the employer, may not qualify for this benefit of sponsoring a foreign national for permanent residency.
Okay.
So this is actually adjudicated by USCIS. So the employer files the petition. So on the employer side, they're looking at the employer, whether you can pay. And then on the employee side, this is where whether if there were requirements set forth for the job, such as experience or special skill, they want to make sure that this employee has it, right?
Sending in evidence to support
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
petition. Okay.
Right. So once that comes together and that petition is approved, this is where now the waiting game kind of proceeds, right? So the third step would be to actually apply for the immigrant visa. So that the immigrant visa is for someone who is applying for the green card outside of the United States. If the individual were here in the U.S. maintaining lawful status, they will be eligible to apply for the green card stateside, okay, which is a different process, right? So when you're applying for the immigrant visa, this is where we have to wait, because depending on the category, right, employment-based jobs or employment-based sponsorships are divided into, like largely 5 categories, right? And there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So EB stands for employment-based.
So a question. So are you saying it's almost like the same thing with, let's say, maybe some sort of family categories you're saying, like
exactly,
it is a visa readily available for this employer type of thing?
No. So like the family side, if you look at the family side, a U.S. Immediate relative of a U.S. citizen has no quota, like no waiting time, right? But the preference categories, right,
yes,
depending on which preference number you are, there's a bit of weight, right, that is determined, right? It's very similar on the employer side, where all of it is considered a preference category. So we have level 1, level 2, level 3, 4, and 5, right? So depending on which preference you are, we have to wait. Oh, I think we froze. Are we still going?
Keep talking.
Oh, there we go.
Talking. She froze.
Yep.
Keep talking.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. All right. So depending on the preference, right, the amount of time you have to wait will differ. And that's when we refer to a document called the Visa Bulletin. And I don't know if we have enough time today to kind of go through the tutorial of a Visa Bulletin, but the purpose of, giving all this information to your viewers is to kind of protect people in the sense that if someone comes to you and says, I can get you a green card like fast, then and especially if it's an employment-based preference, then that something is not right, right? They're not telling you the whole truth.
Unmute.
Let me ask you this. Sorry about that. I think I had a quick power outage.
Oh, no, okay.
So let's jump on the president real quick, okay? Because I always have something to say. The president, right?
Okay.
I say about the presidents, okay? In office going on. So there's something that's mentioned about getting temporary work visas or work something for immigrants. Have you heard about that?
No, I have not. I try to stay off the news because I feel like it, clouds my brain. But
I know. I want to Google it because I want to see exactly. I just like vaguely remember something about getting temporary work visas for immigrants or something like that.
Hold on a second. Let's see.
All right, let's see.
Why is
so it will grant temporary legal status to an estimated, okay, no, that's specifically for Venezuelans. Oh, maybe he was talking about speeding up work permits.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Okay, which obviously is different than the work visas.
Yes.
These are those work authorization forms if you already
Yes.
have an immigration benefit that you're applying for. Okay.
Right.
Because I was wondering how that would affect, you know what I'm saying, like
Right.
the whole
Well,
process.
I mean, you know, I don't want to, you know, say that, you know, in the like the skilled labor industry, there's no remedy, like there's nothing. We have the
Okay.
H-2Bs and the H-3Bs, but these are, you know, again, you know, you have to show seasonality, right? You have to, like, they're usually, again, tailored for specific industries. It's not like an overarching, you know, benefit that any employer in any industry can, you know, can apply for. So I think the question here or the difficulty is access, right? But then access to information. So we can't, you know, employers, I mean, would you make a business decision with a Google search? I wouldn't, right? I'll start with the Google search and then I'll
Well,
line
people
up
make
who.
their legal decisions with a Google search. So
I have a problem with that too. Right. Because look, listen, I'll be the first to admit if I'm feeling a symptom of something, I will Google it and I will take that, you know, Dr. Google diagnosis to my doctor, but I will take it to my doctor. Yes, they will be annoyed. And yes, but they understand that I am, you know, a discerning person who knows whether the source of that information is credible or not. Right. But, you know, they will appreciate the work, the legwork that I had done for them. But of course, they know that I will adhere to their diagnosis and their recommendation in looking after my health. Similarly, yes, you can start your search on Google because, of course, you're curious. It takes time to get an appointment, talk to a lawyer, and it costs money, or at least
right.
for the good ones. So, you know, I understand you don't want to wait. But once you have that information, you can bring it to the table. But what I will not do is, well, I saw on Google X, right? Or somebody else on some blog said X. My job, like you are not doing, I'm not doing you a service by validating or refuting something you saw that was said by someone else. But if you tell me your facts and I will gather that information, all the information I need to give you a legal strategy that you could use with anyone else, even if you don't want to work with me because you don't like the color of my hair, you can use with someone else and say, look, I have this strategy come up by this attorney that I consulted with. I'd like you to implement it, right? Of course, we'd love to implement it for you because we're, you know, we're good at it. But if you don't want to work with us, it has inherent value if you get legal strategy from a licensed attorney who knows what they're doing. But if you're just resorting to Google, I'm sorry, you're going to get all sorts of information that may not even be applicable to you and your specific situation.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say, because I say that all the time, because I will get people that will come to me and say, yeah, but I've been researching this, and this, and, you know, you can, you know, I can stay here and adjust my status in the US if I, you know, entered without status and, you know, stuff like that. And
Right.
it's like,
No.
you never know what's going on with other people. Like everyone's situation is definitely not different. Everyone's situation is unique, and you don't fit into, you know what I'm saying? It's not as cut and dry. It's immigration. It's not as cut and dry as, you know, hey, I have this ticket, let me go pay it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
exactly.
It's not. And I think what really kind of, when you said lack of access to information, or the fact that they don't research or they don't call an immigration attorney before deciding, like making this huge decision for their life. I think that's what kind of it irritates me or makes me feel some type of way.
Yes. I think we have some background noise from somewhere.
When you said lack of access to information, or the fact that I think they don't call it immigration.
Are we getting like a?
We're getting back feed from. You got to mute.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that is like the biggest thing for me, because it's like, you know,
I agree with you.
Not just usually what happens is people will just come to the US.
Right.
And they'll say, I'm here.
Yeah.
You know, so now what can I do? You know what I'm saying? To stay.
Right.
And it's like, well, I needed you to research that prior to coming in. Or if they come here and they overstay, that's the biggest one. They'll come here and overstay, but then they'll leave, but then they'll want to come back. And it's like, but you can't come back now because you overstayed. And, did you consult an attorney before you decided to leave? Or did you consult an attorney before you decided to overstay?
Right.
So I know you probably get the same thing as far as with either people searching or looking for jobs, or employees who may decide to make this decision. Hopefully they don't, because they're a little bit more, educated and stuff like that. But, like you said, research, right? Research, call an immigration attorney, ask them their opinion of the research, because that's fine, right?
Right.
And
Absolutely.
then we can see what options you have.
Right. It kind of, it breaks my heart, especially when I see people who whose overstay or violation could have been avoided with proper information, right? Sometimes, depending on, your life plans, sometimes you got to take, an opportunity that just presents itself. I get that. And I don't judge my clients, and I don't make any judgment calls about what their intentions were, unless, their conduct, or, their treatment of me, especially as a legal professional, tells me that they don't respect, laws, regulations. They just want a means to an end. And I generally don't work with individuals who are like that, because what happens is there's no there's no mulligans in immigration. Okay, and what I mean by mulligans is a do-over. So once the violation happens, it has lifelong consequences, more often than not, that cannot be fixed. You cannot say, I'm sorry, drop crocodile tears. It's not going to help to do that. So what I'm saying is, you have to be the owner of the consequences that happen in your life, especially when it comes to immigration. And with those types of stakes, why wouldn't you go to the best professional that you can have, right? That you can access. So, and also, I know a lot of my colleagues in the immigration bar, we put out free information out there, either through blogs or, YouTube, and I mean, like Melaney, like these videos, or these shows, because we want you to be informed and make informed decisions. But unfortunately, on the other side, there are folks who are, I want to use the word gimmicky, and they use trigger words that get people to click and that get people to call, but they're not telling the whole story. So let me give you an example. Somebody, I think received a call that was one of those potential spammers, those people who are trying to steal your identity or get you to buy a gift card and, give them money or something like that. And because of her present situation, she was utterly spooked to the bone. Like, she was spooked. And I, hope that, consulting with me had given her some semblance of peace, because she was really spooked, because she had a family, she had children. And, but she kept telling me that
this was somebody who had, so they didn't have status, and
right,
they received this message. Okay.
Right, they didn't have status, and for the past, I don't know, 25, 30 years, they just lived under the radar and just lived that way, and never applied for anything, never filed for anything, and so she's wondering, A, what the heck, how did this person get my number? And number two, oh my God, the government is finally coming after me, kind of like, when's the other shoe kind of, going to drop kind of thing. And after screening through everything and listening to what had happened and doing our own independent research, I told her like 95% sure that it was a spam, like a scammer trying to, attempted, scammer, and that she didn't have anything to worry about from anything arising out of that call. Of course, because she was here undocumented, she's always exposed to being picked up or, being called before immigration court.
WCEG.
I'm sorry, what was that?
No, you're good. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So basically, because of that, she was really spooked. But what made things worse was that, on social media, she had seen some attorney posting little clippets saying, hey, have you been here for the past, 10 years, and you have U.S. citizen children? We can get you a green card. Now, what that attorney was referring to probably was non-LPR cancellation of removal, but she didn't mention the fact that you have to be in removal proceedings to trigger that.
Removal proceedings, right.
Exactly. And when I
Mhm.
explained that to her, she was like, "Oh," and we know that we know who they are. They intentionally put people in removal proceedings in hopes of getting that benefit, or for
And
something temporary like a work permit, which only lasts as long as you're in, removal proceedings. So,
that's a whole nother, like, because we could
right.
talk about that all day. We do have to wrap up.
Okay.
So
Oh,
what
this
I
was
want
so
to do,
fun.
well, you'll have to come back. So what I want to do, oh, you know what? Yes, Elizabeth, you will have to come back, and we'll have to talk about
What?
Florida.
Yes.
And what they're doing to their businesses, and checking them off, and making sure that they're not, they don't have
Hiring.
undocumented people, and
Right.
exactly, and getting fined and felony charge. It's crazy. But anyways, that's
Yeah,
a whole
we can.
other
Yeah,
2 hour
that's a
show.
whole nother show.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But what I want you to do is I want you to tell the listeners how they can reach you, if we do have any businesses, or if we even have any employees in these certain situations, to
Yes.
where possibly they could have options. How do they reach you?
Thank you for that. My firm's name is the G Law Firm. You can find us at www.myglaw.com, or you can email us at hello@myglaw.com. So it's very easy to find us. Unfortunately, our social media game isn't as robust as most because most of my clients come to me through word of mouth. But I realized that I need to be able to reach more people, or more people need to be able to reach me, and they won't be able to unless I put myself out there. So we're working on it. We're working on our social media and our LinkedIn. But I'm on LinkedIn. You can Google me. My name is Elizabeth G, spelled J-I. And I'm happy to, if you mention this show or mention Melaney, I'm happy to offer discovery calls where we can, kind of issue spout what we're dealing with and see if actually we can help you. If there's a solution that we can devise for you. And I love being creative, but I am a stickler. So I don't live in the realm of gray. I like things, in immigration, especially when we're dealing with individuals' lives and businesses, to be either black or white, a yes or a no. And if it's a maybe, then it's a more calculated risk rather than let's throw spaghetti on the wall and see which sticks.
See how it
We do
sticks.
not do that.
Exactly. Because we know that doesn't work. Well,
No, it does
Elizabeth, I
not.
want to thank you so much for being on Beyond the Border
Thank
today.
you.
It was very valuable information when it comes to corporate business immigration, because that is one of the fields of law that is very, very sticky, very complex, very intricate. And I do thank you for giving some education to, the listeners on what you really can and can't do when it comes to working in the US. So I want to thank you very much. Everyone, thank you for viewing. Thank you for listening. I am attorney Melaney LaGrone. You can reach me at www.lagronelaw.com. And you can find me all over social media at LaGrone Law. And thank you again, and we will see you in a month. All right.
All right. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.
It's a wrap. Thank you so much. I do apologize. I could have sworn I was muted. But thank you.
No worries, because we did get a lot of back because we could hear us talking through you. So I know your editors will do their thing. So
right. Plus two, when you blanked, you froze for a moment and she started saying, "Oh, what did I do?" And I came on, and I guess when I unmuted at that time to tell her to keep talking, I think I left my mic open at that time, and I do apologize. But
no worries. Thank you so much, Penny.
And you said you're LaGroneLaw.com?
LaGroneLaw.com.
Yeah, I was just putting it on the Facebook as well. Okay, thank you. Have a good week.
All right, bye.
Okay,
Take
bye-bye.
care. Okay, bye.
Oh, right quick.
Bye.
Let me get a couple of pics right quick.
Oh, hold on. Penny, can she come back on to get some pictures?
Sure, if she's still there.
Yeah. Log back in so that we can just take a static photo on Zoom.
Sure.
Yeah.
I meant to get them in the beginning, but I got some where you all were live, but I was trying to get those.
Okay.